Just a heads up here for anybody who hasn't read Absolute Batman, I will be covering some minor spoilers from the first 13 issues of the series. And also, if you haven't read Absolute Batman, why are you here? Go read it. It's really good. I don't know why, but I've always had a fascination with the horror genre. Slasher, supernatural, psychological, found footage. The genre is ripe for anyone who enjoys that fight or flight response without actually being chased by a murderer with a chainsaw. Or a knife, a sickle, I don't know, pick your poison. And though when you think of horror, you often drift towards films or novels, one medium that's often neglected in the discussion is comic books. And since this is a Batman channel, I would be remiss if I didn't discuss this series that's all the rage right now, as the young people say. Then again, I have no idea, what do young people say nowadays?
6, 7!
I'm talking, of course, about Absolute Batman. Now, Batman's never been a stranger to the horror genre. It would be hard for him not to be when his rogues gallery consists of a crazed clown who leaves a permanent smile on your face, sometimes by poisoning you, other times by carving it into your face, or a scarecrow who literally weaponizes fear. And as the characters in his rogues gallery evolve and change, the influence of horror is even more obvious. Absolute Batman's in a category all his own, though. It's violent from the first issue, and like most horror stories, it works to make the protagonist relatable. Now, how do you do that with a Batman who comes in at 6'9" and weighs over 400 pounds? The answer is simpler than you might think. You strip away his wealth and modernize him. In the Absolute universe, Bruce isn't the son of wealthy parents. He's the son of a schoolteacher who was shot to death when he took Bruce and his class on a field trip to the zoo. And the killing of Thomas Wayne in this instance seems to be a lot more random. He's not being robbed, but attacked by a spree killer who could have killed even more people. We don't know at this point in the story, though. In fact, Thomas's death is the catalyst for the first real element of horror, apart from the violence, we see in this comic. After he's shot, his body is propped up against the door of a bat exhibit he put Bruce into to keep him safe from the shooter. But it leaves Bruce trapped, and before he knows it, he's attacked by bats. It's claustrophobic, but also symbolic at the same time. Bruce is literally trapped, being consumed by bats, as he's unable to get past the death of his father. Figuratively, of course, but also literally. It's a great use of symbolism. In a series that plays heavily on the tropes of the horror genre, Absolute has rejuvenated the idea of what Batman is and can be. It's a complete reimagining of the character from the ground up, which in a world populated by reboots sounds like a gimmick. But this is, this is different. Way different. A respectable chunk of Bruce's rogues gallery, Penguin, Riddler, Two-Face, Catwoman, and Killer Croc, are actually childhood friends. Oh, and Martha is alive and works under Jim Gordon for a time, who was the mayor of Gotham for well over a decade. I would argue her relationship in Absolute Batman to Bruce is very similar to that of Spider-Man and Aunt May. Not Werther's original old lady Aunt May.
Thank you, dear. Are you ready for dessert?
But cool, hip Marissa Tomei Aunt May.
Yeah, well, they come in all shapes and sizes, you know.
Although this Martha isn't very cool or hip, she's just tired. Very, very tired. And understandably so. Now, as a whole, on its face, you might not necessarily classify Batman as an outright horror graphic novel, but the deeper you dig, the more you see horror's influence littered throughout the series. Psychological, suspense, gore, torture, and most prominently, body horror. It's all there, and it's all there by design because the writer of Absolute Batman, Scott Snyder, is an avid fan of horror himself, offering critically acclaimed titles like American Vampire and Witches. Previously, Snyder has talked about his relationship with horror and how it helped him alleviate his own history of depression and anxiety. Now, one could argue the seeds of horror that would blossom into Absolute Batman were actually planted in Snyder's run on Batman with the introduction of the New 52. The series starts by introducing the Court of Owls, a secret society whose reach, wealth, and influence reach even further than the Wayne family name, rich and able to show you just how little power you actually have. They also mess with Batman's ego in a way, as he believes he knows every corner of Gotham, only to learn that they have built secret headquarters in buildings owned by Bruce, essentially mocking him and showing just how little he actually knows about the city he swore to protect by operating in his own properties without him knowing. It's a power play, an attempt to show Bruce how powerless he truly is, But in Gotham, you can't be a supervillain without a gimmick, and in this case, it's a creepy mask issued to every member of the court. It's also no coincidence that owls are one of the few predators that hunt bats. In the follow-up, Death of the Family, we see Snyder really flex his horror muscle with his terrifying take on the Joker. A Joker who crudely reattaches his severed face back onto his head. This Joker on his own could be the villain in a horror movie. He starts off by cutting the power to the GCPD and berating Gordon in the dark while going after his men one by one. But he doesn't stop there. One of the creepiest panels in this run is Joker laying under Gordon's bed and telling him he likes to listen to him sleep. And this doesn't even come close to his run in Endgame. No, not that Endgame. This one. Where we see the Joker stalk his victims like a horror slasher, sever Alfred's hand, and even suggest that he might be immortal, giving off serious Pennywise vibes in the process. You see, these horror villains, they're gruesome, violent. They remind Batman of his mortality, which as a superhero is his only real weakness. But most importantly, they challenge Bruce's psyche by letting him know that he's not in control. Snyder's run on the New 52 with Greg Capullo was legendary. And in the same way Tim Burton had more creative leeway with Batman Returns after the success of Batman, Snyder has a lot more freedom on his second run with Batman this time around, essentially building his own Bat universe. As I mentioned briefly before, Snyder's work in horror relies heavily on the notion that the protagonist is not in control of their environment. It's horrifying to a man whose identity is built on being the most intelligent person in the room, the kind of individual to prepare for all outcomes. It's unsettling to feel this powerless, and that lack of power is built on and resulted from an environment. An abandoned building, being in the forest at night, a haunted house, pick your poison. The point is, setting is key. And the setting that makes Absolute Batman so terrifying is Ark M, not to be confused with Arkham. Several of Batman's key rogues gallery are tied to Ark M. Mr. Freeze, for example, becomes this abomination as a result of trying to receive life-saving treatment from his parents. This is a Mr. Freeze who awoke from cryogenesis and doesn't need a suit to remain cold, but does so through his own mutation. And again, on a purely aesthetic level, he looks really creepy, almost like a fusion of Nosferatu and Slender Man. But in the Absolute Batman world, at least the first 13 issues, the biggest monster of all roaming the hallways of Arkham, figuratively and literally, is Bane. Bane is body horror run amok, and actually ends up being the catalyst for the most horror-centric elements of Absolute Batman, at least for the first 13 issues. He is pure evil. He spent his youth as part of a militia run by his father before he was sent to prison, a prison where he was forced to eat rats to survive, as well as hang from the ceilings to avoid drowning when his prison cell would flood on a nightly basis. He eventually escaped with his father and ending up meeting a younger Joker. In the first 13 issues, there's not much given about the Joker, although we do know this version of the Joker is much more a businessman, which again is another reason why I love Absolute Batman. The Joker is wealthy, Batman isn't. It's an interesting way to approach the characters. Absolute Joker told him he could ensure the prosperity of Bane's country, his reason for being in the militia in the first place, if he became his lead enforcer. Oh, and murder his own father. Bane was put through multiple torturous medical procedures to supplement his body with venom, changing him into this absolute, no pun intended, monster. He looks like a well-portioned Tetsuo. Another classic example of body horror, by the way. Working as the Joker's enforcer, he dreams now of retiring to the country he sacrificed his father's life and his own humanity for. But he's not able to do that without a worthy successor to replace him. Someone who can endure the torture he went through to become the monster he is. After several failures, he finds a potential suitor in Batman. Breaking into Ark M, which is going to take me forever to get used to, Batman is confronted by the monster, and with little to no effort on Bane's part, literally less effort than he used in the Nightfall arc or in the Dark Knight Rises, he simply paralyzes him with nerve strikes and then tells him they're going to prep him for surgery, which is never something you want to hear as you're about to lose consciousness. Bane destroys Batman in the process, essentially trapping him in this house of horrors. The people that work at Ark M try to break Batman, chipping away at his spirit, but in true Batman fashion, he refuses to concede. Going on a hunger strike, he's eventually forced to use a feeding tube. Now, something I forgot to mention earlier, the Batman in Absolute Batman is a very accomplished engineer in this universe. So much so that he's actually able to reverse engineer the tube to shoot stomach acid in the face of his captors, in addition to making a crude pair of brass knuckles out of teeth he ripped out of his own mouth. He manages to escape the room he's been trapped in, only to find out the House of Horrors Ark M truly has far more nightmares to offer. An underground facility used to experiment on people, the real horror of Absolute Batman doesn't lie in the hero himself, but his rogues gallery, a who's who of Cronenberg-inspired madmen. In the midst of his escape, we see nods to classic characters. We find him entering the KLAY biome, or clay biome, a patchwork of different bodies held together and living in constant pain, or the Isley ecosystem, where they apparently grow trees for Mortal Kombat levels. Who would have known? And last but not least, the Langstrom experiment, a collection of mutant human-animal hybrids. To those of you unfamiliar with the work of Cronenberg or body horror as a subset, the genre consists of physical deformities and mutations. It's ugly and unnatural, thought-provoking. Well-written body horror highlights what happens when your body betrays you in grotesque and outlandish ways. Bruce is beat down after his failed escape and put through more surgery in an effort to mold him to be Bane's successor. You see, the venom changes him and highlights the main element of body horror, betrayal of your own body. Wanting to see if he could finally break Batman, Bane lets him out of his cell, in his Batman armor. It looks like it's going to be a repeat of what happened previously for Batman, but lucky for him, he had some help from an old friend, Waylon, who you might suspect turned into Killer Croc, but a fairly monstrous version of him. You see, a bulk of the villains in this world are created in any manner of grotesque and surgical ways, and if not a surgical procedure, then by someone's hand. Bane, for example. In an attempt to hurt Bruce further, he goes after the rest of his childhood friends since Croc is already a Croc. In the case of Penguin, he manages to break all of his bones but not damage one vital organ, leaving him deformed. He literally splits Harvey down the middle, even cracking his skull in half, and then later blinding Edward Nygma, although Nygma seems like he's all about it. Horror in the Absolute Universe, when you boil it down to its most basic form, is a battle for your own humanity. Bane's lost his humanity. Mr. Freeze's lost his humanity. I suspect Penguin, Two-Face, and the Riddler will lose theirs as well. And now, given the exact same circumstances, Bane, Batman, who now has superpowers to an extent, will have to face the same fork in the road they did, and not become a monster in the process. Absolute Batman's been a blast to read, and lucky for us, the ride isn't over yet. I mean, we haven't even seen Joker yet. Well, we've seen Playboy Joker, but not the real Joker. Not Absolute Joker. This Joker. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do me a solid, like and subscribe, leave your comments at the bottom, and until next time, same bat time,